been unfaithful," the Millionaire CEO yelled. She left, and 2 years later, he finally realized his mistake when he saw her with a stunning young daughter. Hi, my beautiful family. Welcome back to Mr. Peter Stories, your own family story channel. May the Almighty shower His infinite mercy upon every woman who lights up this world with her love, strength, and grace. May your hearts never know despair, your spirits always rise above challenges, and your courage inspire everyone around you. May your days be filled with peace, your nights with comfort, and your lives with blessings so abundant that your soul overflows with joy. You are the pillars of love, the silent strength, and the sacred heartbeat of every family. If your heart is true, like the video. If your love is real, write, "I am with Mr. Peter." The scream came at 2:47 in the morning, and it shattered 3 years of love in a single breath. Jasmine Rose jerked awake from a dream about their upcoming wedding to find Phil Lynn standing over their bed like an avenging ghost. His phone was clutched in his trembling hand, the screen's blue light casting shadows across his face that made him look like a stranger. His blue eyes, the ones that used to soften when they looked at her, were black with something Jasmine had never seen before. Not anger, something darker. Rage mixed with betrayal, mixed with pain so deep it had calcified into fury. "How long?" His voice was a whisper, but it cut through the darkness like a scalpel through skin. Jasmine's heart slammed against her ribs, confusion and fear flooding her system in equal measure. "Phil, what are you talking about? Baby, what's wrong?" He threw his phone onto the white duvet between them. The screen illuminated dozens upon dozens of messages, each one a nail in the coffin of their relationship. Photos, timestamps, locations. Her brain struggled to process what she was seeing through the fog of sleep and rising panic. Pictures of her with men she barely recognized at first. Wait, no. That was her study group from last semester at the community center. That was her cousin Trevor at the Christmas party her mother hosted. That was Mr. Harrison, her supervisor from the non-profit where she volunteered every Saturday morning. But the captions underneath each photo told an entirely different story. Detailed descriptions of affairs, hotel rooms with specific addresses, secret meetings with times and dates, messages claiming to be from people who had witnessed her infidelity firsthand, anonymous testimonials describing her behavior in graphic, humiliating detail. "This is insane," Jasmine breathed, her hands reaching for the phone with fingers that had started to shake. "Phil, these are lies. That's my cousin. That's my study group from the community college. I can explain every single one of these." "Don't!" He ripped the phone away from her reaching hands, and she flinched backward. In 3 years together, Phil had never raised his voice at her. Not once. Not even during their worst arguments about his controlling mother or her long work hours. He had been gentle, patient, understanding. The man standing over her bed right now was a stranger wearing her fiancé's face. "Don't you dare lie to my face right now. Not after everything we've been through together. Not after everything I've sacrificed for you." The bedroom door burst open with enough force to slam against the wall. Maitland Brown stumbled into the room, her pale face streaked with mascara, wearing one of Phil's old company promotional shirts, like she had been sleeping in his guest room, which she had been for the past week after Jasmine convinced Phil to let her stay when Maitland's landlord evicted her for unpaid rent. "Jasmine, oh my God, I'm so sorry," Maitland sobbed, rushing to Phil's side with the kind of dramatic urgency that would have been comedic in any other context. She placed her hand on his bare shoulder, fingers curling possessively into the fabric of his t-shirt. "I tried to stop him from finding out. I tried to protect you, I swear I did. But he kept asking questions and he wouldn't let it go, and I couldn't lie to him anymore. I couldn't keep covering for you." Ice water flooded Jasmine's veins, spreading from her chest outward until her fingers and toes went numb. She looked at Maitland. Really looked. Not at her best friend of 6 years, the woman she had trusted with her darkest secrets and deepest insecurities. but at the way Maitland's hand rested on Phil's shoulder with a familiarity that spoke of repeated contact. At the way Maitland's green eyes flickered between them, watching Jasmine's reaction with an intensity that had absolutely nothing to do with concern or guilt. At the barely concealed triumph, glittering in those eyes like shards of broken glass. "You did this," Jasmine said quietly, her voice steady despite the world crumbling around her. "Oh God, she's going to deflect this onto me now." Maitland turned to Phil, her voice breaking with perfectly performed anguish. Fresh tears streamed down her face on cue. "This is what she does, Phil. She manipulates people. She makes you doubt yourself. She twists everything until you don't know what's real anymore. I've watched her do it to everyone who gets too close." "I gave you everything!" Phil's roar shook the windows, rattled the framed photos on the dresser, seemed to crack something fundamental in the foundation of the building itself. Jasmine had never heard him sound like this. Feral, destroyed, like something precious inside him had shattered, and the shards were cutting him from the inside out. "I defended you to my family when they said we were moving too fast, that we didn't know each other well enough. I fought with my mother for months because she said you weren't suitable for our family, that we came from different worlds. I chose you over everyone, Jasmine. My mother, my father, my business partners, my entire social circle. And you were fucking around the whole time, using me while you laughed with other men behind my back." "I wasn't—" Jasmine tried to speak, but her voice came out as a whisper against his hurricane. "She told me about college." Phil's face was scarlet now, veins standing out in his neck, spit flying as he screamed. "All of it! The parties where you hooked up with random guys, the different men every weekend before you met me, how you had a reputation on campus for going home with anyone who bought you drinks, how I was just another stupid rich guy you could use for money and security while you kept your options open." The words hit Jasmine like physical blows. She had told Maitland those stories in confidence, during a girls' night 3 months ago, when they were both wine-drunk and sharing their most shameful moments. The messy college years after Jasmine's father died of a sudden heart attack, when she was 19 and drowning in grief and making terrible choices with terrible men, because she wanted to feel anything other than the crushing weight of loss. The shame she still carried about that time in her life. The years of therapy she had undergone to heal, to understand that grief made people do destructive things, to forgive herself for being human and broken and 20 years old. She had trusted Maitland with her darkest moments, her most vulnerable confessions, and Maitland had turned them into weapons, had sharpened them into blades specifically designed to cut where Jasmine was weakest. Those stories were private. Jasmine's voice came out hollow, echoing in her own ears like she was speaking from the bottom of a well. "I told you those things because you were my best friend, because I trusted you with parts of myself I've never shown anyone else. I trusted you. And I trusted you." Phil grabbed the framed photo from the nightstand, the one from their trip to Paris, where he had proposed on the Pont des Arts bridge at sunset. The photo where Jasmine was laughing, her face radiant with joy, his arms around her waist, and his smile so genuine it hurt to look at now. He hurled it across the room with all the strength of his rage and heartbreak. Glass exploded against the wall like a gunshot, shards scattering across the hardwood floor in a glittering constellation of destruction. 3 years, Jasmine. 3 years of my life. I turned down opportunities in New York because you wanted to stay here. I bought this penthouse in the neighborhood you loved even though it wasn't my first choice. I planned our entire future around you, and it was all a lie. Jasmine tried one more time, knowing even as she did that it was futile, but unable to stop herself from trying to save what was already dead. Her hands shook as she reached for her phone on the nightstand, fingers fumbling with the passcode. "Let me show you my class schedule from the community college. Those men in the photos are from my study group. We meet every Tuesday and Thursday at the library to work on our accounting final. I can prove it. I have emails. I have the syllabus. I can call my professor right now." "Stop it!" Maitland's voice turned sharp, cutting through the room like a blade. Jasmine's head snapped toward her, and for just a second, less than a heartbeat, the mask slipped. Jasmine saw triumph glittering naked and undisguised in those green eyes. Satisfaction, victory. The look of someone who had planned something meticulously and watched it succeed beyond their wildest dreams. Phil, don't let her manipulate you with more lies and fake evidence. She's good at this. I've been watching this for months now. The late nights she claimed were studying, but her phone location showed her at bars. The texts she would hide from you, turning her screen away whenever you walked into the room. The way she flinched and closed her laptop whenever I asked about what she was working on. None of that was true. None of it. Jasmine had never hidden her phone, never acted suspicious, never given Phil any reason to doubt her fidelity. But Phil was nodding, his face crumbling, believing every single poisoned word. And Jasmine realized with sickening clarity that this had been planned. Meticulously, patiently. Maitland had spent 6 months since Jasmine got her that executive assistant job at Phil's company, studying them like a scientist studies lab rats, learning their rhythms, their patterns, their vulnerabilities, planting seeds of doubt so subtle that Phil probably didn't even remember when the suspicion started growing. A comment here about how Jasmine seemed distant. An observation there about how she was always on her phone. Tiny drops of poison, administered over months, until the well was contaminated. Jasmine stood up from the bed. She walked to the dresser on legs that felt like they belonged to someone else, opened the top drawer with hands that had gone completely numb, and took out the engagement ring Phil had given her in Paris, the oval-cut diamond he had saved for 8 months to buy, working overtime and skipping meals to afford something worthy of the proposal he had planned. She looked at it for a long moment, this symbol of a future that had just died at 2:47 in the morning. Then she walked back and placed it carefully in Maitland's palm, closing her friend's fingers around it. "You won," Jasmine said softly, her voice steady despite the tears streaming down her face. "Congratulations. Enjoy your prize." Maitland's fingers closed around the ring, and Jasmine saw her eyes widen fractionally. She had expected more of a fight, expected tears, begging, dramatic proclamations of innocence. She had not expected Jasmine to simply surrender. "Jasmine, wait!" Maitland started, but Jasmine was already walking to the closet, pulling on jeans and a sweatshirt with mechanical precision. "Where are you going?" Phil demanded, his voice cracking. "Away from you." Jasmine didn't look at him. Couldn't. If she looked at his face, at the man she had loved with everything she had, she would shatter completely, and she refused to give Maitland that satisfaction. "You made your choice. You chose to believe lies instead of trusting the woman you claimed to love. You chose suspicion over 3 years of loyalty. So I'm making mine. I choose myself. I choose my dignity. I choose to walk away from someone who thinks so little of me." She grabbed her purse and her car keys. Nothing else. Let him keep everything. The clothes he had bought her, the jewelry, the life they had built together. It was all contaminated now anyway, tainted by Maitland's poison and Phil's willingness to believe it. At the door, Jasmine finally allowed herself to turn back. Phil was standing frozen in the middle of the bedroom, his face pale, his body shaking. Maitland had moved closer to him, her hand on his arm now, playing the comforter, the friend, the woman who would help him through this betrayal. "You know what the saddest part is?" Jasmine's voice was steady despite the tears streaming down her face, despite her heart breaking so completely she could feel the pieces cutting her from inside. "I would have spent my whole life proving I loved you. I would have given you everything I had and everything I was. I would have walked through fire for you without hesitation. But you needed so little evidence to believe I was a liar. 1 night of fake photos and planted stories, and 3 years meant nothing." She left, walked out of the penthouse, down the hallway, into the elevator. Behind her, through the closing doors, she heard Maitland's honeyed voice. "Phil, let me stay tonight. You shouldn't be alone after this. I'll take care of you. You can trust me." The elevator doors closed on 3 years of love, on a future that had just been murdered, on the woman Jasmine used to be. When she reached her car in the parking garage, Jasmine sat in the driver's seat for 20 minutes before she could make her hands stop shaking enough to put the key in the ignition. Somewhere above her, in the penthouse that had been supposed to become their home after the wedding, Phil Lynn sat on the edge of the bed surrounded by broken glass and held his phone, staring at the photos that had destroyed his world. And Maitland Brown sat next to him, her hand on his back, whispering comfort and poison in equal measure, smiling in the darkness where he couldn't see her face. Chapter 2. The Pregnancy. 3 weeks of silence felt like 3 lifetimes compressed into minutes that stretched like taffy. Jasmine was staying in her sister Angela's spare bedroom, the one Angela used as a home office, sleeping on a twin bed wedged between filing cabinets and boxes of old tax returns. The bed was too small for Jasmine's 5'7" frame and too big for her broken heart. She hadn't told Angela everything yet, couldn't form the words. Every time she tried to explain what Maitland had done, how methodically her best friend had destroyed her life, the story stuck in her throat like broken glass. How did you explain that kind of calculated betrayal to someone who hadn't experienced it? How did you make someone understand that you had been dissected like a lab specimen, your vulnerabilities catalogued and weaponized, your trust turned into ammunition? The nausea started on day 19. At first, Jasmine thought it was grief manifesting physically. She had barely eaten since leaving Phil's penthouse, surviving on crackers and water and the occasional piece of toast Angela forced on her. Her body felt hollow, scraped clean, a shell pretending to be human. But when the smell of Angela's morning coffee made her sprint to the bathroom and vomit until she dry-heaved bile, a different kind of dread settled into her bones with the weight of certainty. No. Please, God, no. Not this. Not now. The pregnancy test sat on the bathroom counter for 1 hour and 17 minutes before Jasmine could force herself to look at it. She knew what it would say. Her body had already told her. The tender breasts, the bone-deep exhaustion, the way food smelled wrong, the suspicious absence of her period that she had been attributing to stress. 2 pink lines, unmistakable, damning, undeniable. She was 8 weeks pregnant with Phil Lynn's baby. Jasmine slid down the bathroom wall and sat on the cold tile floor, staring at nothing. Her hand moved automatically to her still flat stomach, pressing against skin that hid a secret that would change everything. A baby. Their baby. Made in love and trust before Maitland's poison destroyed everything they had built together, and Phil would never know. The thought crystallized with absolute certainty, sharp and clear as diamond. He had chosen not to believe her. He had looked at manufactured evidence, at manipulated photos and planted lies, and decided she was a cheater, a user, a woman who would exploit him for his money while entertaining other men behind his back. He didn't deserve to know about this child. He didn't deserve to be a father to a baby he helped create while he was busy calling the mother a whore. "Jazz, you okay in there?" Angela's voice came through the door, concerned. "You've been in there a while." Jasmine opened the door. Stood there holding the pregnancy test, her face completely blank, her eyes dry. "I'm pregnant." The words came out flat, empty. A statement of fact, devoid of emotion, because if she let herself feel anything, she would collapse completely. Angela's face went through 6 distinct emotions in 3 seconds before landing on fierce protective fury. She looked at the test, at her sister's blank expression, and immediately pulled Jasmine into her arms. "Does he know?" "No." Jasmine's voice was steady. "And he's never going to." Angela pulled back, studying her sister's face. "Jazz, that's a huge decision. Maybe you should think about—" "I gave birth to my niece in this bathroom when your water broke early and we couldn't make it to the hospital," Jasmine interrupted, her voice harder than Angela had ever heard it. "I held your hand through 18 hours of labor. I know exactly how huge this decision is, and I'm telling you, Phil Lynn destroyed me. He threw me away like garbage because his secretary whispered lies in his ear for 6 months. I begged him to listen. I showed him proof. I offered to call my professor, my study group, my cousin. He chose to believe Maitland instead. Jasmine's hands clenched into fists, her nails digging crescents into her palms. So no, he doesn't get to know about this baby. He doesn't get to play father when it's convenient, then disappear when someone else plants doubt in his mind. He made his choice. Now I'm making mine. Angela studied her sister's face. Jasmine had always been the soft one growing up, the gentle one, the one who saw the best in people even when they showed her their worst. That woman was gone now, burned away by betrayal, replaced by someone harder, colder, forged in the fire of Maitland's calculated destruction and Phil's willingness to believe it. "Okay," Angela said finally, her voice gentle. "Okay, what do you need?" Jasmine took a shaky breath, the first crack in her armor. "I need to change my business name for the online boutique I've been building. I need to move somewhere no one knows me, somewhere I can disappear completely, and I need you to promise me something. Anything. If he ever comes looking for me, if he ever realizes what Maitland did and tries to find me—" Jasmine's voice cracked. "You tell him I don't want to be found. You tell him he made his choice and I made mine. You tell him that some things, once broken, can never be fixed." Her hand moved to her stomach again, protective, fierce. This baby deserves better than a father who abandons its mother based on lies, better than a man who doesn't trust the woman he claims to love, better than someone who believes the worst of me with so little evidence. That night, Jasmine blocked every number that could connect her to her old life. Phil's number, obviously, his business line, his mother's number, his father's, his business partner Daniel's. She deleted her Facebook, her Instagram, her Twitter, every digital footprint that could be traced. She broke her lease via email, forfeiting her security deposit, and started researching cities across the country where she could vanish. Seattle, Portland, Austin, Denver, somewhere with good schools and opportunities and zero chance of accidentally running into Phil Lynn at a coffee shop or grocery store. She chose Seattle, rain and mountains and a fresh start, 3,000 miles from the life that had imploded. Before she left, Jasmine made one more call, to a women's clinic in Seattle, scheduling her first prenatal appointment under a new name. Not for abortion. Never that, but for survival. For building a life where this baby would be wanted, loved, protected from the poison that had destroyed its parents' relationship. "Name for the appointment?" the receptionist asked, keyboard clicking in the background. Jasmine looked at her reflection in Angela's hallway mirror. The woman staring back was a stranger, thinner, with shadows under her eyes like bruises, her normally warm brown eyes gone flat and hard. This woman had been forged in betrayal and emerged on the other side fundamentally changed. "J.R. Morrison," Jasmine said, her voice steady. "My name is J.R. Morrison." She would use her first and middle initials, take her grandmother's maiden name, become someone new, someone Phil Lynn had never touched, never hurt, never destroyed. Meanwhile, across the city in a penthouse that felt like a mausoleum, Phil was drunk dialing Jasmine's number for the 73rd time that night. Each call went straight to the automated message: "The number you have reached has been disconnected or is no longer in service." Disconnected, like their relationship, like their future. Maitland watched from his couch, her legs curled underneath her, wearing a silk robe she had purchased specifically for this purpose. She was drinking his expensive wine from the bottle he had been saving for his wedding reception, and she was smiling in the darkness. Everything was going exactly according to plan. Tomorrow she would comfort him, make him breakfast, listen to him rage about Jasmine's betrayal, plant more seeds, remind him of every suspicious moment, every time Jasmine had seemed distant or distracted, build the narrative until he was convinced he had made the right choice. And eventually, when enough time had passed, when he was broken enough and vulnerable enough, she would make her move. She had waited 6 years for Phil Lynn. She could wait a little longer. In Seattle, 3,000 miles away, Jasmine Rose Morrison vomited into a gas station toilet and made a promise to the tiny cluster of cells growing inside her. I will protect you from all of this. I will build us a life where we never need anyone who doesn't believe in us. I promise." She didn't know it yet, but that promise would transform her into someone extraordinary, someone who could survive anything. Chapter 3. 2 years of silence and justification. Ruby's closet had started as a desperate idea, coded in midnight hours between morning sickness and existential terror, built with the last of Jasmine's savings and pure, stubborn refusal to fail. Now it was pulling in $2 million annually, and Jasmine Rose Morrison stood in her downtown Seattle office, looking out over the city skyline like a queen surveying her kingdom. Behind her, Ruby Lynn Morrison played with blocks on the expensive carpet. She was all dimples and wild curls and boundless joy that shouldn't exist given the circumstances of her conception, but somehow did anyway. "Mama, look!" Ruby held up a precarious tower of blocks, beaming with pride. Jasmine turned from the window, and the hard edges that had become her default expression softened into something almost human. "That's amazing, baby girl. You're so smart." Ruby's tower immediately collapsed. She looked at the scattered blocks for exactly 2 seconds, then started rebuilding without tears. Resilient, determined, just like her mother. Jasmine's assistant Keisha knocked on the glass door. "You have the venture capital call in 10 minutes. "Thanks, Ruby can stay." Jasmine checked her reflection in the window. Navy blazer, white silk blouse, diamond studs she bought herself. Every inch the successful entrepreneur who built an empire from nothing while raising a child alone. The investor call went exactly as planned. Ruby's closet was expanding. 3 new distribution centers, 50 new employees, projections showing $5 million in revenue next year. Jasmine had transformed her grief into something tangible, something that couldn't be taken away by lies and betrayal. After the call, Angela video called from Chicago. "How's my favorite niece?" "Auntie Angie." Ruby climbed onto Jasmine's lap, pressing her face to the screen. "Jazz, you look exhausted," Angela said quietly once Ruby wandered back to her blocks. "I'm fine." "You're not dating. You're not going out. You're just working and being Ruby's mom. That's surviving, not living." "Surviving is all I have energy for right now." Jasmine's voice was clipped. They had this conversation every few weeks. "I have Ruby. I have my business. I have peace. That's enough." "Do you ever think about him?" Jasmine's jaw tightened. "No." Liar. The truth was, Jasmine thought about Phil Lynn every single day. When Ruby laughed with his exact dimples. When she fell asleep with her little fist curled against her cheek, the same way Phil used to sleep. When Ruby said something in that thoughtful, careful way that was pure Phil. Sometimes, late at night when Ruby was asleep, Jasmine would let herself remember the good parts, before Maitland. When Phil looked at her like she was his whole world. When his promises felt real and forever seemed possible. Then she would remember his face twisted with rage at 2:47 in the morning, calling her a liar, choosing Maitland's poison over 3 years of devotion. And the memories would harden back into the armor she wore like a second skin. Meanwhile, 3,000 miles away, Phil Lynn was dying in slow motion. Not literally dying, though sometimes his business partner Daniel Walsh wished it was literal, because at least then there would be a clear treatment plan. This was worse. Phil had become a ghost haunting his own life, going through the motions without actually living. He had lost 38 pounds. His suits hung on him like they belonged to someone else. He worked 90 to 100-hour weeks, slept maybe 4 hours a night, and hadn't smiled in 2 years. His dark hair was graying at the temples, even though he was only 31. The passionate, energetic man Daniel had known for a decade had been replaced by this empty shell. But here was the thing Daniel didn't know. Phil didn't actually believe he had made a mistake. Not entirely. Not yet. Maitland was gone. That had imploded after 4 months of the most joyless relationship in human history. She had tried everything to make Phil love her. cooked elaborate meals he didn't eat, bought expensive lingerie he didn't notice. Finally, Phil ended it. "I can't do this. I don't love you. I will never love you. You need to leave." Maitland turned vicious, screaming about wasted time, threatening to destroy his reputation. Phil just stared at her with dead eyes and said, "Do whatever you want. I don't care." She was fired the next day. Disappeared with one final venomous text. "You'll never find her. I made sure of that. Enjoy dying alone." Phil deleted the message and went back to work. But the photos, the anonymous messages, the detailed descriptions of Jasmine's affairs, those still lived in a folder on his phone. Late at night, when the insomnia was particularly bad, Phil would study them like archaeological evidence. Because what if he had been right? What if Maitland's methods were wrong, but her information was correct? What if Jasmine really had been cheating? The photos looked real. The timestamps made sense. Yes, Jasmine claimed they were her study group and her cousin and her boss, but couldn't that be a convenient cover story? Wasn't that exactly what a cheater would say? Phil had convinced himself of a narrative, and narratives once established were incredibly hard to dismantle. He told himself, "I gave her a chance to explain. She could have shown me her class schedule immediately instead of getting defensive." He told himself, the anonymous messages had too much detail to be fabricated. Someone knew something. He told himself, "I loved her so much it blinded me. Maybe I ignored red flags." This internal justification kept him functional, because if he admitted he had been catastrophically wrong, if he acknowledged that he had destroyed an innocent woman based on manufactured lies, then he would have to face the enormity of what he had done. And Phil Lynn was not ready for that reckoning, not yet. So he worked and slept fitfully, and told himself he had made the painful but necessary choice. And slowly, day by day, he became a little more dead inside. Daniel tried interventions, dragged Phil to a therapist, which lasted 3 sessions before Phil stopped going. "She keeps asking me if I have regrets. I don't see the point in dwelling on the past." Daniel set him up on dates. Phil attended like a robot, made polite conversation, never called back. Finally, Daniel confronted him over drinks. "You're killing yourself over a woman who's probably moved on. You need to let go." "I have let go," Phil said, and he actually believed it. "I'm just focused on work." For 2 years? Building a company takes dedication. Daniel studied his friend's hollow face and knew he was lying to himself. But you couldn't force someone to see truth they weren't ready to accept. What Daniel didn't know was that Phil had tried to find Jasmine in those early months, hired one investigator who found nothing, visited her family once, where Jasmine's mother looked at him with pure hatred and said, "You threw my daughter away. Stay away from her," before slamming the door. After that, Phil told himself it was a sign. She had moved on. He needed to respect that. Except he couldn't move forward, could only exist in this limbo where he was functional but not alive, successful but not happy. "Mr. Lynn?" His assistant's voice crackled through the intercom one afternoon. "You have a delivery from the Business Excellence Foundation. Leave it on my desk." "Sir, I think you should look at this. It's the gala nomination list." Phil almost told her to throw it away. He hadn't attended a social event in 2 years, but something made him walk to his office and pick up the heavy cream envelope. Inside was an invitation to the annual Business Excellence Awards Gala. He was about to drop it in the trash when his eyes caught on the nominee list. Emerging Entrepreneur of the Year category. 5 names. The 4th name made his heart stop. J.R. Morrison, Ruby's Closet. Ruby. The name detonated in his brain like an explosion, scattering all his carefully constructed justifications like shrapnel. Ruby was his grandmother's name. The grandmother who had raised him, who had been the only person in his family to genuinely love Jasmine, who had died 6 months before the proposal. Jasmine had loved his grandmother, had visited her in the hospital every day during those final weeks, reading to her, holding her hand. Ruby's Closet. His hands started shaking so badly he dropped the invitation. It fluttered to the expensive carpet, and Phil stood there frozen, his entire carefully constructed world tilting on its axis. Jasmine was pregnant. She had been pregnant when he threw her away, and somewhere in the world there was a child. His child, named Ruby. All his justifications, all his rationalizations, all his careful self-deception shattered in an instant. What had he done? Phil collapsed into his desk chair, buried his face in his hands, and for the first time in 2 years, let himself feel the full weight of what he had destroyed. Chapter 4. The Reckoning Begins. Daniel found Phil in his office at 2 in the morning, surrounded by papers, looking more alive than he had in years, and also more terrified. "What happened?" Daniel asked carefully, recognizing the manic energy radiating from his friend. Phil's episodes usually preceded either breakthrough or breakdown, and Daniel couldn't tell which this was going to be. "I need you to find everything you can about J.R. Morrison and Ruby's closet." Phil's voice was hoarse from hours of frantic phone calls to investigators who wouldn't answer at this hour. Company registration, business address, owner information, tax documents, everything that's publicly available. Why? Daniel had a sinking feeling he already knew. "Because I think it's Jasmine, and I think..." Phil's voice cracked. "I think she was pregnant when I accused her, when I threw her out." Daniel had heard Jasmine's name exactly twice in 2 years, once when Phil was drunk off his ass and muttering about destroying the love of his life. Once when Maitland was being escorted out of the building and screamed that Jasmine deserved everything she got. "Phil, listen to yourself. You're spiraling based on a business name. The company is called Ruby's Closet." Phil looked up, and his eyes were wild, red-rimmed, desperate. "My grandmother's name. The grandmother Jasmine loved, who died before I proposed. She wouldn't use that name unless..." He couldn't finish the sentence. The room went very quiet. "Even if you're right," Daniel said slowly, "even if Jasmine was pregnant, she clearly didn't tell you. Maybe she had a good reason." "Of course she had a good reason." Phil's voice rose to a shout. "I called her a cheater and threw her out based on Maitland's lies. But I didn't know they were lies, Daniel. The photos looked real. The messages were detailed. I thought..." He stopped, unable to continue. "What did you think?" Daniel asked quietly. "I thought I was protecting myself. I thought I was making the hard choice before she could hurt me worse." Phil's hands were shaking. "My ex-girlfriend in college cheated on me with my roommate. I know that's not an excuse, but when Maitland showed me those photos, something in me just believed it. Believed that someone like Jasmine would eventually realize she could do better than me." This was the first time Phil had admitted any of this out loud. Daniel sat down heavily. "So what are you going to do?" "I need to know if I'm right. I need to know if there's a child. If there's..." Phil couldn't say "my daughter" yet. Couldn't make it that real. "If there's a baby somewhere who exists because of us. And if there is, then I need to find them. I need to apologize. I need to..." "Slow down." Daniel pulled out his phone. "Let me make some calls. Give me 48 hours. Those 48 hours were the longest of Phil's life. He didn't sleep, couldn't eat, just paced his penthouse like a caged animal while his brain supplied increasingly horrific scenarios. A baby girl with Jasmine's smile growing up without a father, a toddler who would never know him, Jasmine struggling through pregnancy alone because he had been too paranoid and broken to trust her. What if something had gone wrong during the pregnancy? What if Jasmine had needed him and he wasn't there? The maternal mortality rate for black women flashed through his mind, statistics he had never paid attention to before, suddenly vivid and terrifying. He pulled out his phone and opened that folder. The photos Maitland had sent, the anonymous messages. This time, he looked at them with fresh eyes. With suspicion instead of confirmation bias, the photo of Jasmine with her affair partner at the coffee shop. He zoomed in. There were 4 other people at the table, all with laptops open, textbooks scattered everywhere. It was clearly a study group. The photo of her embracing another man at a party. He enlarged it. The man was black, in his 50s, with grey at his temples. Could that be her cousin Trevor? Or maybe her boss from the non-profit? The timestamps on the messages. He checked them against his calendar. They had all come in a 23-minute window while he was in a board meeting. He had been unreachable. Convenient timing for someone who wanted to make sure he saw them all at once, in rapid succession, without time to think critically. The anonymous senders claimed to have witnessed Jasmine's infidelity firsthand, but they provided no names, no way to verify their identities, no concrete details that couldn't have been gleaned from social media or careful observation. Phil felt nauseous. He had destroyed Jasmine based on this? On photos that could be explained innocently and anonymous messages that could have been written by anyone? What kind of man did that make him? When Daniel finally called, Phil nearly dropped his phone answering. "It's her," Daniel said quietly. "J.R. Morrison is registered as Jasmine Rose Morrison. Business license filed in Seattle 18 months ago. Tax documents match. She's been there the whole time." Phil made a sound that wasn't quite human. Relief and agony and 2 years of suppressed grief, all colliding at once. "Is there a child?" His voice came out as a whisper. "I couldn't confirm that without crossing legal and ethical lines. But Phil, there's something else, something you need to know about that night." "What?" "I've been going through old files from when Maitland worked here, found some things that didn't make sense, so I did some digging." Daniel's voice turned grim. "The anonymous messages you got that night, the ones that told you Jasmine was cheating, I pulled the phone records from our company account." Phil's blood went cold. "And?" "They all came from the same burner phone, purchased 2 days before on Maitland Brown's credit card." The world stopped spinning. "There's more," Daniel continued relentlessly. "I found therapy records Maitland accidentally left on the office printer about 4 months before you fired her. Clinical diagnosis of narcissistic personality disorder, history of romantic obsession with unavailable men, 3 previous documented incidents of interfering in other people's relationships." Phil couldn't breathe, literally couldn't get air into his lungs. "And financial records showing she was $240,000 in debt when Jasmine convinced you to hire her. Credit cards maxed out, court judgments, the works." "Stop!" Phil gasped. "Stop talking. You need to hear this. I'm going to be sick." He barely made it to his office bathroom before vomiting violently. Everything he had eaten in the past day, which wasn't much, came up in acidic waves. He heaved until there was nothing left, then dry-heaved bile, his body rejecting the truth as thoroughly as his mind wanted to. Maitland had set him up, systematically, patiently. She had studied them like a scientist conducting an experiment, learned their vulnerabilities, and exploited them with surgical precision. And he had let her, had believed her lies because they confirmed his worst fears about himself. Daniel was waiting when Phil emerged, pale and shaking. "I need her address." "Whose? Jasmine's or Maitland's?" "Maitland's." "Phil, I don't think confronting her right now is a good idea." "Give me the address, Daniel." Something in Phil's voice made Daniel shut up and text him the information without further argument. Phil arrived at Maitland's apartment complex at midnight. It was a decent building, better than what someone 200,000 in debt should be able to afford. He wondered if she had used the salary from his company to dig herself out, or if she was still drowning. He didn't care. Didn't care if she lived or died or suffered. He just needed to hear her admit it. Phil pounded on her door until she opened it, sleepy and confused, and wearing pajamas with cartoon cats on them. For a moment, seeing her like this, she looked almost normal, almost harmless. Then he shoved past her into the apartment and slammed the evidence on her kitchen table. Phone records, financial documents, therapy records. "Explain this." Maitland looked at the papers spread across her table like tarot cards revealing her crimes. Her face went through several expressions in rapid succession. Shock, fear, calculation. Then something unexpected happened. She laughed. It was a horrible sound, unhinged and bitter and completely devoid of remorse. The laugh of someone who had spent so long wearing a mask that removing it felt like liberation. "You really thought perfect Jasmine could love someone like you?" Maitland's voice dripped venom. All pretense of friendship dissolved. "You were a meal ticket, Phil. A wallet with legs. I did you a favor showing you what she really was. You created fake evidence." Phil's voice was deadly quiet. "You manipulated me. You destroyed my relationship with lies. I freed you from a liar and a user." Maitland was screaming now, getting in his face, all the rage and jealousy she had been suppressing for years pouring out. She had everything, the perfect face, the perfect body, the perfect personality, and then she got you too. What did I have? Nothing. I was drowning in debt, losing my apartment, about to be homeless, and little Miss Perfect got to play savior, getting me a job with her rich boyfriend. She was pacing now, manic energy radiating from her. I watched her for 6 years, Phil. 6 years. I knew she was too good to be true. I knew if I dug deep enough I'd find the dirt. But she was genuinely perfect and I hated her for it. Phil grabbed her shoulders, not violently but firm enough to make her stop pacing and look at him. "Was she pregnant when she left?" Maitland's face went white. For the first time, real fear flickered across her expression. "What? When Jasmine left, was she pregnant with my child?" The silence stretched between them like a physical thing. How would I know that?" But Maitland's eyes flickered away, and Phil saw the truth. "You knew." His voice broke. "You knew she was pregnant, and you didn't tell me. You let her leave, let her disappear, knowing she was carrying my baby." "She probably got rid of it anyway," Maitland started, but she never finished the sentence. Phil shoved her backward, not hard enough to hurt, but hard enough to make her stumble into her kitchen counter. He had never put his hands on a woman in violence in his entire life, but in that moment he wanted to destroy her the way she had destroyed him. "If you ever come near me again." Phil's voice was lethal quiet, each word enunciated with perfect clarity. "If you ever speak Jasmine's name, if you even exist in my peripheral vision, I will dedicate every resource I have to making sure you never work again, never have credit, never have a normal life. Do you understand me?" Maitland was crying now, mascara streaming down her face in black rivers, reaching for him with trembling hands. "Phil, please, I love you. I did this because I love you so much. You don't know what love is." Phil stepped away from her like she was contaminated, like touching her might infect him with her poison. "Love doesn't destroy. Love doesn't manipulate. Love doesn't lie. You're sick, Maitland, and you need help that I can't give you." He walked to her door, then paused with his hand on the knob. "I loved Jasmine more than I've ever loved anything in my life. I would have died for her without hesitation. And you took that away from me because you were jealous and in debt and obsessed." He looked back at Maitland, sobbing in her kitchen. "I hope it was worth it." Phil left her there and didn't look back. In his car, he sat with his hands on the steering wheel and let himself process everything. Jasmine had been innocent. Completely, entirely innocent. He had destroyed her based on fabricated evidence from a woman with diagnosed mental health issues and severe financial motivation. And somewhere, Jasmine was raising his child, a child named Ruby, a child who would never know her father because he had been too broken and paranoid to trust the woman he loved. Phil put his head down on the steering wheel and cried harder than he had ever cried in his life. Chapter 5. The Obsessive Search. The next morning, Phil hired 3 private investigators. All 3 came back within a week with the same answer. Nothing. J.R. Morrison existed on paper. Business registration for Ruby's Closet LLC. Tax documents filed with the IRS corporate mailing address at a mail forwarding facility. But Jasmine Rose Morrison herself, a ghost. No social media presence under any variation of her name. No property records in Seattle or anywhere else. No vehicle registration. No utility bills in her name. The business address was a corporate mail facility that forwarded everything to a P.O. box, and the P.O. box required ID to access, but not to rent. The accountant who filed Ruby's Closet's taxes worked remotely and had never met the owner in person, only exchanged documents via encrypted email. She had erased herself so completely it was like she had never existed. Phil became obsessed. It started as a need to apologize, to explain, to make things right. But as the weeks turned into months and every lead turned into a dead end, it metastasized into something darker, something consuming. He visited Jasmine's old job at the non-profit. They told him she hadn't worked there in over 2 years, and they had no forwarding information. He tracked down her college friends, found them through LinkedIn and Facebook. None of them had heard from her. Some of them told him to stop looking, that Jasmine clearly didn't want to be found. He tried her family next. That went worse. Angela slammed the door in his face without a word. Jasmine's mother opened the door, looked at him with pure hatred that made him take a step back, and said words that would haunt him. She could have died alone, Phil, during the pregnancy, during childbirth, from complications. She could have needed you, and you would never have known, because you threw her away like trash based on lies from a woman you had known for 6 months. Her voice was quiet, controlled, which made it worse somehow. So no, I'm not telling you where she is. And if you come back here again, I'm calling the police. The door closed. The lock clicked. The porch light turned off, leaving Phil standing in the darkness with those words echoing in his head. She could have died alone. Black women had mortality rates during childbirth that were significantly higher than white women. Jasmine could have hemorrhaged, could have had complications, could have needed emergency surgery while she was alone and terrified, and he was 3,000 miles away, convincing himself he had been right to leave her. The thought made Phil physically ill. He tried social media deep dives next, paying for services that claimed they could find anyone. They found nothing. Cross-referenced every database, every public record, every digital footprint. Jasmine Rose Morrison had vanished like she had never existed. "You need to stop this," Daniel said one night, finding Phil passed out at his desk at 4 in the morning, surrounded by dead-end leads and empty coffee cups. "This is destroying you. She's out there raising my child. Maybe, or maybe the business name is a coincidence. Maybe you're seeing connections that aren't there because you want them to be." Phil looked at his friend with hollow eyes. Her grandmother's name was Ruby. She died of breast cancer when Jasmine was 12. Jasmine used to visit her grave every year on the anniversary. She wouldn't use that name for a business unless it meant something. Daniel had no response to that. "I need to find her," Phil continued, his voice cracking. "I need to explain. I need to apologize. I need to know if there's a child. And if she doesn't want to be found? If she's built a new life and you showing up would destroy it? Then I'll leave her alone. But I need to try. I need her to know that I know the truth now, that I know Maitland lied, that I was wrong." Phil's hands were shaking. "I can't live with this, Daniel. I can't live knowing I might have a child out there who thinks their father abandoned them." Daniel sighed. "I have a friend who does corporate deep dives, very thorough, very expensive. Give me 1 week. 1 week turned into 2, then 3, then a month. Finally, Daniel's friend called with information. Ruby's Closet was more successful than anyone had realized. Multi-million-dollar revenue, expanding into new markets. The owner, J.R. Morrison, had given exactly 1 interview to a trade publication. But it was done entirely via email. No photos, no video. Just thoughtful answers about building a business as a single mother. A single mother. Phil's hands shook so badly he dropped the report. There was a child. His child. And Jasmine was raising her alone. "There's more," Daniel's friend continued. Morrison is a nominee for Emerging Entrepreneur of the Year at the Business Excellence Foundation Gala next month. She's expected to attend in person to accept if she wins. Phil felt something crack in his chest. Can you get me a ticket? Already done. Front row. But Phil, listen to me carefully. The investigator's voice turned serious. If you approach this woman at a public event, if you cause a scene, you could destroy everything. Her reputation, her business, her life. Think very carefully about whether you have that right. Phil didn't respond, just hung up and stared at the gala invitation that had arrived in his office weeks ago, the one he had ignored. He had one chance, one opportunity to see Jasmine face to face, to explain, to apologize, to beg for forgiveness. He couldn't screw this up. But first, he needed to do something he should have done 2 years ago. Phil called his lawyer. I need you to draw up a document. Full termination of parental rights for any child that might exist. Jasmine Morrison gets sole custody, permanently. No visitation, no contact, unless she specifically requests it. Phil, you don't even know for certain there is a child. Draw up the papers. If there is a child, I want Jasmine to know she has complete control. I'm not trying to take anything from her. I'm trying to give her the choice I took away 2 years ago. The lawyer reluctantly agreed. Phil also set up a trust fund, $50 million, made out to any child of Jasmine Rose Morrison, accessible only by Jasmine herself. No strings attached, no conditions. His lawyers thought he was having a breakdown. Maybe he was. But if he had a daughter out there, she deserved everything he could give her, even if he never got to meet her, even if Jasmine hated him for the rest of her life. Especially because he deserved that hatred. The month until the gala felt like a lifetime. Phil prepared obsessively, wrote speeches in his head, practiced apologies, tried to find words adequate to express his regret. There were no words adequate for what he had done. 3 days before the gala, Phil stood in his bathroom at 3 a.m, staring at his reflection. He looked like a stranger, hollow-eyed, gaunt, prematurely grey. The man in the mirror was a ghost of who he used to be. The man in the mirror had destroyed the woman he loved because he was too broken to trust her. I'm sorry, he whispered to his reflection, practicing. I know sorry doesn't fix anything. I know I destroyed something irreplaceable. But I need you to know that I know the truth now. I know Maitland lied. I know you were innocent. And if there's a child, if there's a daughter, I want you to have complete control over whether I ever meet her. I'm not here to take anything. I'm here to give you the choice I stole. His reflection stared back, unconvinced. The day of the gala arrived. Phil didn't RSVP. Bought a last-minute ticket at the door with cash, using a fake name. Wore a suit he had purchased that morning because all his old ones didn't fit anymore. Positioned himself in the back of the ballroom behind a marble column where he could see the stage, but remain invisible. The ceremony began. Awards were given. Speeches were made. Phil heard none of it. His eyes stayed locked on the side entrance where the nominees would enter. Then the MC announced, and now, the Emerging Entrepreneur of the Year category. Phil stopped breathing. 5 names were read. J.R. Morrison, Ruby's Closet, was third. The winner is... The MC opened the envelope with dramatic flair. J.R. Morrison, Ruby's Closet. The ballroom erupted in applause that sounded like ocean waves crashing, and Jasmine Rose walked onto the stage. Chapter 6. The Transformed Queen. Phil's heart stopped completely, and for a moment he thought he might actually die right there in the ballroom, heart attack brought on by the sight of Jasmine Rose walking onto that stage. She was transformed. This wasn't the woman he had loved. That Jasmine had worn her hair long, natural curls cascading past her shoulders, had favored soft colors, gentle fabrics, clothes that made her approachable, had moved through the world with a quiet grace that invited people in. This woman was a warrior queen. Her hair was cut in a sleek bob that framed her face with geometric precision, highlighting cheekbones that seemed sharper now, more defined. She wore a navy suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent, tailored so perfectly it might as well have been painted on her body. The jacket was structured, powerful, with sharp lines that screamed authority. Diamond studs in her ears caught the stage lights and threw fragments of brilliance across her dark skin. 4-inch heels that added height she didn't need because her presence filled the entire room without physical assistance. But it was the way she moved that broke Phil's heart completely. She walked onto that stage like she owned it, owned the room, owned the entire city. Head high, shoulders back, every step deliberate and controlled. The soft, gentle woman who used to curl into his side on the couch was gone. This woman looked like she could crush diamonds with her bare hands and not break a sweat doing it. This was what he had created when he destroyed her. Jasmine accepted the Crystal Award from the MC with a smile that was professionally warm and emotionally arctic. She stepped up to the microphone, and 500 people went silent, transfixed by her presence. "Thank you," her voice rang across the ballroom, clear and strong and utterly controlled. "This award represents something more than business success. It represents surviving when everyone tells you that you can't. It represents building something from nothing when the people you trusted most have taken everything you had. It represents learning that the only person you can truly, completely depend on is yourself." The audience applauded, not understanding the layers of meaning in those words, the razor blades hidden in silk. But Phil understood. Every syllable was a knife aimed directly at his heart. "To every woman who's been doubted, dismissed, or destroyed by someone who claimed to love them," Jasmine continued, and Phil saw her knuckles go white where she gripped the edges of the podium, the only sign of emotion in her otherwise perfect composure. "This award is for you. We don't need anyone's permission to rebuild ourselves. We don't need anyone's belief to succeed. We don't need anyone's validation to know our worth. We rise alone, and we rise stronger for it." The applause was deafening. Women in the audience were on their feet. Phil saw tears on some faces, recognition on others. Jasmine had just spoken directly to every woman who had ever been betrayed and survived it. She smiled, gracious and professional, stepped away from the microphone and started descending the stage stairs. That's when Phil saw her. A little girl ran from the front row toward the stage, and the entire ballroom made a collective sound of appreciation. The child was maybe 18 months old, wearing a tiny navy dress that matched Jasmine's suit perfectly, with white tights and tiny patent leather shoes. Her hair was pulled into 2 puffs on top of her head, wild curls that defied gravity. Her skin was light brown, a perfect blend of Jasmine's deep brown and something paler. And when she looked up at Jasmine with pure, undiluted joy, Phil saw his own eyes staring back. Ruby, his daughter. The room tilted. Phil grabbed the marble column to stay upright, his vision tunneling until all he could see was that little girl, that perfect, beautiful, impossible little girl who had his eyes and Jasmine's smile and shouldn't exist except she did. She was real. She was running to her mother with the absolute confidence of a child who has always been loved. Jasmine scooped Ruby up with the practiced ease of someone who had done this 10,000 times, and Ruby squealed, "Mama!" with a laugh that was pure Jasmine, but dimples that were entirely Phil's, his dimples, the ones that created parentheses around his smile when he was genuinely happy, something he hadn't been in 2 years. The crowd watched them with warm appreciation, this successful entrepreneur and her adorable daughter, a heartwarming moment in an otherwise formal evening. They didn't know they were witnessing the aftermath of a destruction, the phoenix that had risen from ashes Phil had created. Jasmine stepped down from the stage, Ruby in her arms, accepting congratulations from the crowd with that professional smile that never reached her eyes. She handed Ruby to a woman Phil recognized as Angela, her sister, and started making her way through the ballroom toward the exit. Phil moved without thinking, pushed through the crowd, ignoring protests, stepping on expensive shoes and bumping into important people. His eyes locked on Jasmine's back, on the woman he had destroyed, on the mother of his child who he had never known existed. She was 10 feet from the exit when Phil's voice cracked across the ballroom like a whip. "Jasmine." The entire room went quiet. Literally, instantly quiet. 500 people stopped talking simultaneously, champagne glasses frozen halfway to mouths, conversations dying mid-sentence. The silence was so complete, Phil could hear his own heartbeat thundering in his ears. Jasmine froze. Her entire body went rigid, shoulders rising, spine stiffening. For 3 seconds, she didn't move, didn't breathe. Just stood there like she had been turned to stone by the sound of his voice. Then, slowly, with the deliberate control of someone preparing for battle, she turned around. Their eyes met across the ballroom, and Phil watched every emotion flash across her face in 3 seconds. Shock, recognition, horror, panic, fear. Then her expression hardened into something that could cut diamond, all vulnerability vanishing behind armor that looked impenetrable. She walked straight toward him. The crowd parted like the Red Sea before Moses, everyone sensing that something was about to happen, something dramatic and painful and very, very public. Jasmine stopped 2 feet from Phil. Close enough he could smell her perfume, something different now, sharper and more expensive than the soft vanilla she used to wear. Everything about her screamed that she had become someone else entirely, someone he had created by destroying the woman she was. "You have 10 seconds to leave before I have security remove you." Her voice was conversational, almost friendly, which made the threat more devastating. "I suggest you don't waste them." "Jasmine, please. I know everything now." The words tumbled out of Phil in a desperate rush. "I know about Maitland, I know about the burner phone, I know she lied about everything. I know you were innocent, 5 seconds. Her voice cut like glass, each word precisely enunciated. Phil was crying now, openly, mascara-less tears streaming down his face, and he didn't care that 500 people were watching him break. Didn't care about his reputation or his business or anything except making her understand. "I was wrong. About everything. I should have believed you. I should have trusted you. I destroyed the best thing in my life because I was broken and paranoid and 2 seconds. And I had our daughter alone." Jasmine's voice cracked for the first time, emotion bleeding through the armor like water through a crack in a dam. "You threw me away when I was carrying your child, Phil. You chose a liar's word over mine, and I gave birth to Ruby alone in a hospital 3,000 miles from everyone I loved because I couldn't bear to be in the same city as you." The ballroom gasped. Actually, audibly gasped. Phones were definitely recording now, this drama too good to miss. "I'll never forgive myself." Phil's voice broke completely, shattering into pieces like the framed photo he had thrown against the wall 2 years ago. "I just need you to know that I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. For the rest of my life, I will be sorry, and it will never be enough." Security was approaching now, 2 large men in black suits moving through the crowd with purpose. "I don't care about your sorry," Jasmine said, and each word was carefully measured, controlled, delivered with surgical precision designed to cut as deeply as possible. "You destroyed the woman who loved you. That woman is dead. You killed her at 2:47 in the morning 2 years ago when you chose to believe manufactured evidence over 3 years of devotion. And you're never getting her back." Security grabbed Phil's arms. He didn't resist, couldn't move. Just stood there staring at Jasmine with his entire soul breaking in his eyes. "Please," he whispered, "please let me explain. Gentlemen, remove him from the premises. If he returns, call the police." They started dragging him toward the exit. Phil looked back one more time, desperate, drowning, and saw Ruby watching him over Angela's shoulder. His daughter. Those pale blue eyes that matched his exactly, that serious expression she inherited from him, studying this strange man who was making her mama upset. Ruby's little hand waved, tiny fingers opening and closing in that way toddlers wave, innocent and sweet. "Bye-bye, sad man," Ruby called out, her voice carrying across the silent ballroom with perfect clarity. The words hit Phil like a physical blow. Sad man. Not daddy, not father, just a sad man her mama didn't want around. His knees buckled. Security caught him before he hit the floor, but they had to literally drag him out because his legs wouldn't work anymore. The ballroom doors closed behind him, cutting off his view of Jasmine standing in the center of the room, holding their daughter's award, her face carved from marble, refusing to show weakness in front of 500 witnesses. Outside, it was raining. Of course it was raining. Seattle rain, cold and relentless, soaking through Phil's too-big suit in seconds. He sat on the curb like a homeless person, water streaming down his face mixing with tears, and cried harder than he had ever cried in his entire life. His daughter had called him sad man. She didn't know who he was, would never know who he was, would grow up with Jasmine's stories about a man who had abandoned them, who had chosen lies over love, who had thrown them away when they needed him most, and every single word of those stories would be true. Phil pulled out his phone with shaking hands, opened his contacts, found Daniel's number. "I need you to come get me," Phil said when Daniel answered. His voice was flat, empty, the voice of someone who had just lost everything for the second time. "I found her, I found them, and she'll never forgive me. Where are you?" "Sitting in the rain outside the Fairmont Hotel, wishing I was dead." Daniel was there in 15 minutes. Chapter 7. The Public Unraveling. The video went viral within hours. Someone had recorded the entire confrontation on their phone. Phil crying openly, begging Jasmine for forgiveness. Jasmine's devastating response, her voice cold and controlled. The reveal that he had abandoned her while she was pregnant. Ruby calling him sad man before security dragged him out. By morning, it had 3 million views on various social media platforms. The headlines were brutal. Tech CEO confronts ex he abandoned while pregnant at award ceremony. Millionaire Phil Lynn's public meltdown after destroying relationship. The man who threw away everything. A cautionary tale. Phil's phone exploded with calls. His PR team, frantic. His board of directors, furious. His mother, horrified by the public humiliation. His competitors, gleeful. Journalists requesting interviews. He ignored all of them. Daniel found him 3 days later in his penthouse, unshaven, still wearing the suit from the gala, surrounded by empty whiskey bottles. The video was playing on loop on his laptop, and Phil was watching it over and over, torturing himself with his own failure. "You need to make a statement," Daniel said quietly. "The board is threatening to force you out. The stock price dropped 8%. You're becoming a cautionary tale about toxic masculinity and not believing women." "Good," Phil said, his voice hoarse. "I deserve all of it." "Phil, I threw away a pregnant woman based on lies from a jealous ex-colleague. I didn't believe Jasmine when she tried to explain. I chose suspicion over trust. The internet is right about me." Phil took another drink straight from the bottle. "I'm exactly what they're saying I am." Daniel sat down on the couch, carefully moving empty bottles to make room. "What are you going to do?" "I don't know. Die, maybe. That seems like the best option for everyone." "Don't talk like that." Phil laughed, a sound completely devoid of humor. "Why not? Jasmine's life would be better if I didn't exist. Ruby would be better off never knowing I'm her father. The company would be better off with someone else running it. Give me one good reason why I should keep existing. Because suicide is a permanent solution to a temporary problem. This isn't temporary, Daniel. I destroyed the love of my life and abandoned my daughter. That's permanent. The consequences of that should be permanent too." Daniel grabbed the whiskey bottle from Phil's hand. "Stop drinking and listen to me. You made a catastrophic mistake, multiple catastrophic mistakes, but wallowing in self-pity and alcohol isn't going to fix anything. Nothing's going to fix this. No, probably not. But you can try to be better. You can try to become someone who deserves forgiveness, even if you never get it. Phil stared at his friend with hollow eyes. How? Therapy, real therapy, multiple times a week. Actual work to understand why you were so easy to manipulate, why you chose to believe the worst instead of trusting your partner. Daniel pulled out his phone. I have a name. Trauma specialist, works with people who've destroyed their relationships. She's expensive and she doesn't take shit from anyone. Fine. And you need to stop drinking. Right now. Cold turkey. Phil looked at the bottles surrounding him. Okay. And you need to make a public statement. Not defending yourself. Apologizing. Taking full responsibility. Admitting you were wrong. The PR team said I should deny everything, claim Jasmine's lying, suggest she's manipulating the situation. Fire the PR team, Daniel said flatly. They're giving you advice that will destroy you further. The public doesn't want spin right now. They want accountability. Phil was quiet for a long moment. Then, write the statement. I'll sign whatever you think is appropriate. Daniel spent 3 hours crafting a statement that was honest without being self-pitying, apologetic without being defensive. He showed it to Phil, who read it and started crying again. This makes me sound like a monster. You were a monster. To Jasmine. The statement reflects that reality. Phil signed it. The statement went live that evening. I owe Jasmine Morrison and our daughter Ruby a public apology for the pain I caused them. 2 years ago, I believed false accusations about Jasmine's fidelity without properly investigating, without trusting the woman I claimed to love. I was manipulated by someone with malicious intent, but that doesn't excuse my actions. I should have believed Jasmine. I should have trusted her. Instead, I threw her away when she was pregnant with our child, and she had to build her life and her business alone while raising our daughter without my support. I am deeply sorry for the pain I caused. I am working with therapists to understand why I was so easy to manipulate and why I chose suspicion over trust. This statement is not a request for forgiveness. I don't deserve forgiveness. It's simply an acknowledgement of truth and an apology to Jasmine and Ruby for destroying our family. I will be taking a leave of absence from Lynn Technologies to focus on becoming a better person, though I recognize that may be impossible after what I've done. The statement went viral. Some people appreciated the accountability. Others said it was too little, too late. The internet debated whether Phil deserved redemption. Jasmine's response came through her lawyer 2 days later, released to the same media outlets. Ms. Morrison appreciates Mr. Lynn's public acknowledgement of his actions. However, she requests that he respect her privacy and her daughter's privacy moving forward. She has built a successful life and business, and she does not wish to be defined by Mr. Lynn's past mistakes. She asks that media and public attention return to her professional accomplishments rather than her personal history. Professional, controlled, revealing nothing of what she actually felt. Phil read the statement 50 times, searching for any hint of warmth, any suggestion of possible future forgiveness. There was none. Meanwhile, the story took an unexpected turn. An investigative journalist decided to dig into the manipulation Phil had mentioned. Using the information from Phil's statement and some excellent detective work, she found Maitland Brown. The journalist's exposé came out a week later. The woman who destroyed a relationship, Maitland Brown's pattern of manipulation. The article was devastating. It detailed Maitland's history of becoming obsessed with unavailable men, the 3 previous documented incidents of interfering in other people's relationships, her narcissistic personality disorder diagnosis, her massive debt and financial motivation for maintaining her job at Lynn Technologies. Most damning, the journalist had tracked down Maitland's therapist, who spoke on background without violating patient confidentiality laws, and previous victims of her manipulation schemes. The internet turned its fury from Phil to Maitland. She was doxxed within hours. Her address, her phone number, her email, all posted publicly. Her current employer fired her immediately to avoid association. She received thousands of death threats, had to go into hiding. The journalist found her 2 weeks later living in a cheap motel and convinced her to go on record. The interview was painful to watch. "I loved him," Maitland said, and she looked genuinely destroyed. "I loved Phil for 6 years. I watched Jasmine walk into his life and take everything that should have been mine. She was so perfect, so beautiful, so confident. And I was drowning in debt and loneliness, and I wanted what she had. So you destroyed her relationship. I freed him from someone who didn't deserve him." Maitland's voice rose. "She had everything. Why did she get him too?" "So you created fake evidence." Maitland looked directly at the camera. "Yes. I bought a burner phone. I sent anonymous messages. I took photos out of context and made them look incriminating. I lied about Jasmine's college past, weaponizing things she told me in confidence. I manipulated Phil for 6 months, planting tiny seeds of doubt until I could destroy their relationship in one night. And when you learned Jasmine was pregnant? I didn't know for certain, but I suspected, and I didn't tell him. I thought she'd get an abortion or give the baby up or something. I didn't think she'd actually keep it." "Why are you confessing this now?" Maitland looked broken. "Because I lost anyway. I destroyed Jasmine's relationship with Phil, but he never loved me. He couldn't. How could he love the person who destroyed the woman he actually cared about? And now everyone knows what I did, and I have nothing. No job, no friends, no future. I destroyed 3 lives, including my own." The interview ended with Maitland crying, alone in a cheap motel room, the living embodiment of the consequences of jealousy and manipulation. The internet had complicated feelings. Some people felt sympathy for her obvious mental health issues. Others maintained that mental illness wasn't an excuse for calculated cruelty. The debate raged for weeks, but one thing became clear. Phil's story shifted from man who abandoned pregnant girlfriend to 3 people destroyed by one woman's manipulation. Jasmine's phone exploded with interview requests. Everyone wanted her perspective, her story, her forgiveness or condemnation. She turned them all down with the same professional statement. "I have said everything I intend to say on this matter. I am focused on my business and my daughter, and I request privacy to live our lives." But privately, alone in her Seattle apartment after Ruby was asleep, Jasmine watched Maitland's confession interview and cried. Not for Maitland, not for Phil, for the woman she used to be, the one who had trusted her best friend and loved a man with her whole heart before both of them destroyed her. That woman was dead, and no amount of public vindication would bring her back. Chapter 8. The Letter. The package arrived at Ruby's Closet headquarters on a Tuesday morning, 6 weeks after the gala disaster. Keisha brought it to Jasmine's office with a worried expression. "This came for you. Security already screened it. It's not dangerous, but it's from Phil Lynn." Jasmine's first instinct was to throw it away unopened. Her second was to set it on fire. Her third was to send it back marked, "Return to sender." Instead, she set it on her desk and stared at it for 3 hours while Ruby napped in the office playroom. Finally, she opened it. Inside was a letter, handwritten, 22 pages, and legal documents. Jasmine started with the legal documents because they were easier, more clinical, less emotionally devastating. Parental rights termination agreement. Phil Lynn voluntarily terminating all parental rights to Ruby Lynn Morrison, giving Jasmine sole custody, permanently and irrevocably. No visitation rights, no contact, nothing. He was giving up his daughter completely. Attached were bank statements showing a $50 million trust fund, made out to Ruby Lynn Morrison, accessible only by Jasmine. Phil's name nowhere on it. No strings, no conditions, no requirements for contact or acknowledgement, just money for Ruby's future and Phil erasing himself from her life. Jasmine's hands were shaking as she picked up the letter. Part of her didn't want to read it, didn't want to hear his excuses or his apologies or his pain. She had built a life of armor specifically to protect herself from caring about Phil Lynn's feelings. But she read it anyway. All 22 pages. It started formal. "Dear Jasmine, I know you don't want to hear from me. I know no words I write can undo the damage I've caused. But I need you to understand what happened, not because it excuses my actions, nothing excuses what I did, but because you deserve to know the full truth." Then it detailed everything. The burner phone evidence Daniel had found, Maitland's therapy records, the financial desperation, the calculated manipulation over 6 months. "But here's what you need to understand, Jasmine. Maitland didn't make me destroy us. I did that myself. She provided the matches, but I lit the fire. I chose to believe her lies because they confirmed my worst fears about myself. I never thought I deserved you. You were beautiful, accomplished, kind, confident. I was just a tech guy who got lucky with a startup. When my ex-girlfriend cheated on me in college, something broke inside me. I started believing that love was temporary, that eventually everyone would leave or betray me. I tried to protect myself by never fully trusting anyone. Then I met you, and you were so perfect it terrified me. I kept waiting for the other shoe to drop, for you to realize you could do better, for you to leave. So when Maitland showed me evidence that you were cheating, part of me was almost relieved, because it meant I was right to be suspicious. It meant my paranoia was justified. It meant I could push you away before you could hurt me worse. I know how psychologically damaged that sounds. I know it doesn't excuse anything. I'm just trying to help you understand that this wasn't about you failing me. This was about me being so fundamentally broken that I destroyed the best thing in my life rather than risk being hurt." The letter continued for pages, detailing his breakdown after she left. The drinking, the insomnia, the way he convinced himself he had been right to leave her. "I spent a year justifying my decision, telling myself you must have been cheating, that the evidence was too convincing, that I had made the painful but correct choice. I was living in a delusion because facing the truth, that I had destroyed an innocent woman who loved me, would have shattered me completely. When I saw Ruby's closet on that nomination list and realized you had been pregnant, my entire carefully constructed reality collapsed. Every justification vanished. Every rationalization turned to ash. I had thrown away a pregnant woman based on lies from a jealous colleague. I had abandoned our child before she was even born. I had destroyed 3 lives, yours, mine, and Ruby's, because I was too broken and paranoid to trust love. Then it got worse. I want you to know that I attempted suicide 8 months ago, stood on the roof of my building for 4 hours with every intention of jumping. Daniel talked me down, and I was hospitalized for 3 weeks. They diagnosed me with severe depression and PTSD from childhood trauma I had never processed. I'm telling you this not to make you feel sympathy. I don't deserve your sympathy. I'm telling you so you understand how completely I destroyed myself along with us. The consequences of my actions have been catastrophic for everyone involved. I've been in intensive therapy for the past 2 months, 3 times a week, actually doing the work to understand why I was so easy to manipulate, why I chose suspicion over trust, why I sabotaged my own happiness. The letter's final section made Jasmine cry. "I'm signing away my parental rights because it's the only gift I can give you. Control, choice, the things I took away when I threw you out that night. If you want me to be Ruby's father, to have visitation, to be involved in her life in any capacity, that decision is entirely yours. I will never contact you again unless you specifically request it. I will never try to see Ruby unless you permit it. I am removing myself from your life completely unless you decide you want me there. The trust fund is for Ruby's future. She deserves everything I can give her, even if I never get to meet her. Even if she grows up hating me for abandoning you. She deserves security and opportunity and a life free from the destruction I caused. I love you, Jasmine. I never stopped loving you. But I understand that love isn't enough when you've destroyed someone's ability to trust it. I understand that some things once broken can never be fixed. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm not asking for a second chance. I'm simply giving you the power to decide our future and promising I will respect whatever you choose. If you decide you never want to see me again, I will disappear. I will live with the knowledge that I destroyed the best thing in my life and abandoned my daughter, and I will deserve every second of that pain. But if you ever decide you want me to try to be the father Ruby deserves, I will spend the rest of my life earning that privilege. The choice is yours. It always should have been. I'm so sorry for everything. Forever apologetically, Philly. Jasmine finished the letter with tears streaming down her face, her mascara ruining her silk blouse for the second time in 2 years. She should hate this letter. She should hate him for making her cry, for making her feel anything other than the armor-plated indifference she had cultivated for 2 years. But she didn't hate it. She hated that she didn't hate it. Jasmine called her lawyer immediately. Draft a legally binding agreement. Phil Lynn will have no contact with me or my daughter unless I specifically request it. He will not attempt to see us, approach us, or communicate with us in any capacity. If he violates this, I will pursue harassment charges and a restraining order. Are you sure? He's offering you $50 million. I don't want his money. I want him gone until I decide otherwise. The lawyer drafted the agreement, sent it to Phil's lawyers the same day. The response came back in 4 hours. Phil signed it without question, without reading it. According to his attorney, who called Jasmine's lawyer horrified, he's giving up permanent rights based on your discretion. He's putting his entire relationship with his daughter in your hands. Good, Jasmine told her lawyer. That's exactly what I wanted. But that night, after Ruby was asleep, Jasmine sat in her living room holding Phil's letter and the termination papers and cried harder than she had cried since the night he destroyed them. Because part of her, the part she hated, the part she kept locked away, still loved him. The broken, vulnerable man in that letter was the Phil she remembered. The one who was insecure and damaged and trying so hard to be better. The one who loved her even when he was destroying her. She hated him for what he did. She hated herself for still caring. And she had absolutely no idea what to do with either of those facts. That night, Phil's phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. I received your letter and the documents. I've drafted a legally binding agreement that you will have no contact with me or Ruby unless I specifically request it. If you violate this, I will pursue legal action. Do you agree to these terms? Phil stared at the message for a long time, then typed back, yes. Whatever you decide, I respect it. Thank you for reading the letter. A pause. 3 dots indicating she was typing. Then, don't thank me. I haven't forgiven you. I just needed to know the truth. I understand. I won't contact you again unless you ask me to. Another long pause. Then, good. And that was it. The conversation ended. Phil blocked his own ability to message that number. Gave his phone to Daniel with instructions to delete the contact information so he couldn't break his promise in a moment of weakness. Jasmine saved the number, but didn't label it. An unknown contact that she might need someday, or might delete tomorrow. She couldn't decide. She put Phil's letter in a locked drawer in her office, told herself she would never read it again, read it 17 more times over the next month, hated herself a little more each time. Chapter 9. The Gradual Thaw. 3 months passed in a strange limbo. Phil kept his word. No contact, no attempts to see Jasmine or Ruby, no public statements. He simply disappeared from her life completely as requested. Jasmine should have been relieved. She had exactly what she wanted: complete control, total absence of the man who destroyed her. Instead, she felt off balance. Like a part of her had been bracing for a fight that never came. She found herself checking the news about Phil more than she wanted to admit. Found articles about his leave of absence from Lin Technologies, his continued therapy, his complete withdrawal from public life. Found one particularly detailed article from a business magazine. Where is Phil Lin now, the tech CEO who destroyed his life? The article painted a picture of genuine transformation, intensive therapy 3 times a week, group sessions for people who had destroyed their relationships, volunteering at a women's shelter, living quietly, no parties, no dating, just work and therapy, and trying to become better. The journalist had gotten an interview with Phil's therapist, anonymized with permission. My client is doing the hardest work I've seen in 20 years of practice. He's not justifying his actions or making excuses. He's facing the full horror of what he did and trying to understand why. That kind of honesty is rare. Jasmine read the article twice, then a third time, then called Angela. I think I'm going crazy, Jasmine said without preamble. What's going on? I keep reading about Phil, his therapy, his volunteer work, his transformation, and part of me wants to believe it's real, and I hate myself for caring. Angela was quiet. Do you still love him? I don't know. I love who he was. I hate who he became. I'm confused about who he is now. What does your therapist say? She says I'm allowed to have complicated feelings, that trauma and love can coexist, that forgiveness isn't required, but also isn't forbidden. Jasmine's voice cracked. I just don't know what to do. What do you want to do? I want to hate him. I want to move on and never think about him again. But I can't stop thinking about his letter, about how broken he sounded, about how he gave me complete control instead of fighting. Jasmine was crying now, and I keep wondering if Ruby deserves to know her father. Jazz, listen carefully. Angela's voice was firm. You're not being selfish. You're protecting yourself and your daughter. If you never forgive him, that's valid. You don't owe him anything. I know. But if you're considering letting him back in, do it for the right reasons. Not guilt. Not because his redemption arc looks convincing. Only if you genuinely believe it's best for you and Ruby. That night, Jasmine sat in Ruby's room watching her daughter sleep. Ruby was getting bigger, more verbal, more aware. She asked questions now. Why don't I have a daddy like Emma at daycare? Jasmine had been saying, some families have daddies, some don't. We have Mama and Auntie Angie and Grandma, and that's our family. Ruby seemed satisfied for now, but someday she would want to know more. What would Jasmine tell her? Jasmine made a decision, a small one, tentative, easily reversible. She pulled out her phone and typed a message to the unknown number she had saved, but never labeled. I have questions about what happened. I'm not ready to see you or let you meet Ruby, but I think I need to understand. Are you willing to answer questions via text? She hit send before she could second-guess herself. The response came in less than a minute. Yes. I'll answer anything you want to know. Whatever timeline you need. Thank you for even considering this. Jasmine stared at the phone, then typed, Tell me about the first time Maitland made you doubt me, the very first seed she planted. It was 3 months after she started working. We were at a company happy hour. You couldn't come because you had class. Maitland asked if you were always so busy. When I said yes, she said, I just worry that you give so much and don't ask for much back. I've seen friends get taken advantage of that way. It was subtle. I didn't even realize she had planted doubt until much later. Jasmine felt her chest tighten. And you believed her. I didn't consciously believe anything yet, but the seed was planted. Over the next months, she'd make little comments. Jasmine seemed stressed. Did you see how long she was on her phone? She left work early 3 times this week. All with false concern, never accusatory, just observations that made me start watching you differently. So by the time she showed you the fake evidence, you were already primed to believe it. Yes, I'm so ashamed. I should have questioned her motives. I should have trusted you, but I wasn't. I was an easy mark because I was already afraid of being abandoned. They texted back and forth for 3 hours, Jasmine asking questions, Phil answering with painful honesty, never defending himself, just explaining. It didn't make Jasmine forgive him, but it helped her understand. The texting became a pattern. Every few nights, Jasmine would send questions. Phil would answer. They never talked about the present, never discussed Ruby, just dissected the past. A month in, Jasmine asked, "Do you think about her? About what you destroyed?" "Every single day, every hour. I think about the life we could have had. Ruby growing up with both parents, us getting married. And then I think about how I destroyed all of it because I was too broken to trust love." Does thinking about it help? No. It just reminds me what I lost. But I do it anyway because I deserve to sit in that pain. Jasmine sat with that answer before responding. "I don't want you to suffer forever, Phil. I just want you to understand what you did. Maybe understanding requires suffering. Maybe. I'm still figuring out what I need from you. Take all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere." 2 months after the gala, Jasmine made another decision. She sent a text. "I want to meet, just to talk. 1 hour, neutral location. Ruby won't be there." Phil's response, "Whenever and wherever you want, I'll be there." They met at the coffee shop. Jasmine arrived first, saw Phil walk in and almost didn't recognize him. He had gained back some weight, looked healthier, but his eyes were different. Older, sadder. The eyes of someone who had seen the worst parts of themselves. They sat across from each other, 2 feet of table between them, an ocean of hurt. "Hi," Phil said quietly. "Hi." Finally, Jasmine said, "I've been reading about you. The therapy, the volunteer work. It's not a performance. I'm not trying to impress you. I'm just trying to become someone who won't destroy people I love. Do you think that's possible? Can people actually change that fundamentally? I don't know, but I have to try. Because the alternative is staying the person who destroyed you, and I can't live with that." They talked for 3 hours, painful conversation about betrayal and manipulation and healing. Jasmine asked hard questions. Phil answered without flinching. "Have you dated anyone since me?" "No. I can't imagine being interested in someone else." "Do you still love me?" "Yes, completely, painfully. Even though I'm not the same person. Even though, maybe especially because you survived and became stronger." Jasmine felt tears prick her eyes. "I don't know if I can ever trust you again. I don't know if I can forgive what you did." "I know. But I think," she took a breath, "maybe Ruby deserves to meet you. Not because you've earned it, but because she should have the choice." Phil's eyes filled with tears. "Really? Supervised visits, 1 hour a week. My sister will be present. If you do anything that makes me uncomfortable, they stop immediately. Do you understand?" "Yes, whatever you're comfortable with. Thank you." "Don't thank me yet. Ruby might hate you. You'll have to earn every second of her attention." "I know. I'm ready." They set up a schedule. Thursday mornings, 1 hour with Ruby, Angela watching. As Jasmine stood to leave, Phil asked, "Is there any chance that someday you might want more than this?" Jasmine was quiet. "I don't know. Ask me again in a year." "A year? If you're still showing up, still doing the work, ask me again. But no promises. This is just a maybe." "I'll take maybe," Phil said. Jasmine left, didn't look back. But she didn't block his number either, and that, for now, was enough. Chapter 10. The Earned Beginning. The first Thursday arrived too slowly and too quickly simultaneously. Phil showed up at the coffee shop at exactly 9:55 a.m., 5 minutes early, holding 2 coffees and a kid's smoothie. He had barely slept. Spent the entire night replaying every possible scenario, good and bad, catastrophic and hopeful. What if Ruby hated him on sight? What if she loved him immediately? What if Jasmine changed her mind and didn't show? At 10 a.m. exactly, the door opened. Jasmine walked in, holding Ruby's hand, with Angela following close behind like a bodyguard. Ruby was bigger than in the video, more solid, more real. She wore purple overalls with a dinosaur on the front and tiny sneakers that lit up when she walked. Her curls were pulled into two puffs on top of her head, wild and perfect. She looked around the coffee shop with those pale blue eyes, Phil's eyes, taking in everything with serious focus. Then she saw Phil and stopped. "That's the sad man from Mama's big party," Ruby announced to no one in particular. Jasmine knelt down next to her daughter. "Baby, remember what we talked about? This is Phil. He's someone Mama used to know and he'd like to meet you, but you don't have to talk to him if you don't want to." Ruby studied Phil with the intensity only toddlers could achieve. "Why were you sad?" The question hit Phil like a physical blow, out of the mouths of babes. "I was sad because I hurt your mama a long time ago," Phil said carefully, kneeling down to Ruby's level but keeping his distance. "And I'm very sorry about that." Ruby processed this. "Did you say sorry to Mama?" "Yes, many times." "And Mama forgived you?" Jasmine's voice was soft. "Mama's still thinking about forgiving. That's why we're here, baby, so you can meet Phil and decide if you want him to be in our life." Ruby looked at the smoothie in Phil's hand. "Is that for me?" "Yes, strawberry banana. Your mama said that's your favorite." Ruby looked at Jasmine for permission. Jasmine nodded. Ruby took the smoothie and sat down at the table with the casual confidence of someone who had never experienced rejection. Phil sat across from her, hands shaking. Angela positioned herself nearby, watchful, ready to intervene if needed. "I like dinosaurs," Ruby announced, pointing to her overalls. "I can see that. Do you have a favorite dinosaur?" "T-Rex, but also Triceratops because they have horns and horns are cool." Phil felt something crack in his chest. This was his daughter, this perfect, sweet, confident little person who liked dinosaurs and strawberry banana smoothies and had his eyes and Jasmine's smile. They talked for an hour, about dinosaurs mostly, about Ruby's daycare, about her friend Emma who had a bunny, about her favorite color, purple, and her favorite food, pizza, but only with cheese, no yucky vegetables. Ruby treated Phil like a friendly stranger, interested but cautious. She didn't climb into his lap or call him daddy, but she didn't reject him either. Near the end of the hour, Ruby asked, "Are you going to come back next week? Do you want me to?" Ruby thought about this seriously. "Can you bring another smoothie?" "Yes." "Then okay." It was the most beautiful thing Phil had ever heard. When the hour was up, Jasmine and Angela prepared to leave. Ruby waved goodbye casually, already moving on to the next thing, the way children do. But Jasmine paused at the door. "You did well. She liked you. Thank you for this, for giving me a chance. It's not for you, it's for her. Don't forget that." "I won't." The second Thursday was easier. Ruby remembered him, asked for her smoothie immediately, told him about a bug she saw at daycare. The third Thursday, Ruby brought him a drawing. "I made this for you. It's a T-Rex eating pizza." Phil put it on his refrigerator the moment he got home, right next to the first drawing Ruby had made months ago. By the 8th Thursday, Ruby started calling him Phil instead of the sad man. By the 12th, she climbed into his lap to show him pictures on Jasmine's phone. By the 16th, she asked, "Phil, are you my daddy?" The coffee shop went silent. Jasmine's hand froze halfway to her coffee cup. Angela tensed. Phil felt like his heart might explode. "Yes," he said quietly. "I'm your daddy, but I haven't been a very good one. I wasn't there when you were born or when you were a baby. I made some very big mistakes." Ruby processed this. "But you're here now." "Yes, and if it's okay with your mama, I want to keep being here. Ruby looked at Jasmine. "Is it okay, Mama?" Jasmine's eyes were filled with tears. "Yes, baby, it's okay." Ruby turned back to Phil. "Then okay. You can be my daddy." Simple as that. The innocence and forgiveness of a child who didn't understand the complexity of adult betrayal and redemption. Phil couldn't speak, just held his daughter for the first time with her permission and cried into her wild curls. 6 months passed. Thursday mornings became sacred. Phil never missed one, never showed up late, brought smoothies and listened to stories about daycare and read books, and slowly, painfully, built a relationship with his daughter. Jasmine watched it all with careful eyes, watched how patient Phil was when Ruby threw tantrums, how he listened when she talked about her day, how he asked Jasmine's permission before buying Ruby gifts or suggesting activities. He was doing the work, consistently, boringly, reliably. Month 7, Jasmine suggested extending visits to 2 hours. Month 9, she agreed to let Phil take Ruby to the park, with Angela still present but at a distance. Month 11, Ruby had her 3rd birthday party. Phil was invited. Jasmine's entire family was there, mother, aunts, uncles, cousins, all of whom stared at Phil like he was a dangerous animal that might attack at any moment. Phil endured it with grace, answered questions politely, admitted his mistakes without defensiveness, spent the entire party focused on Ruby, not on his own discomfort. Near the end, Jasmine's mother pulled him aside. "You hurt my daughter," she said quietly. "You threw her away when she was pregnant. You made her give birth alone. You made her cry more nights than I can count." "I know. I'm so sorry. I don't accept your apology, but Ruby seems to like you, and Jasmine seems—" She paused, choosing words carefully. "Less angry, so I'm not going to make a scene. But if you ever hurt either of them again, there won't be anywhere you can hide from me. Understand?" "Yes, Mom." "Good. Now go help my granddaughter blow out her candles." Month 12 arrived. 1 year since Jasmine had given Phil permission to meet Ruby. 1 year of supervised visits and careful boundaries and slow, painful trust building. Phil asked to meet Jasmine alone, without Ruby, at their coffee shop. Jasmine knew what was coming. He was going to ask the question she had told him to ask in a year. She almost cancelled, almost texted that she wasn't ready, that she needed more time. But she didn't. She showed up, sat across from him, waited. "It's been a year," Phil said quietly. "You told me to ask again in a year if I was still showing up, still doing the work, still being the father Ruby deserves." "I remember. I've been in therapy for 18 months now. 3 times a week, no breaks. I've worked through my abandonment issues, my paranoia, my tendency to believe the worst of people I love. I've volunteered at the women's shelter every week, helping survivors of manipulation and abuse. I've stayed single because I can't imagine being interested in anyone but you. I've shown up for every single Thursday with Ruby, plus her birthday, plus holidays you've let me attend. I've done everything you asked and more." He took a breath. "So I'm asking, is there any chance at all, that you might want more than this? More than supervised visits and careful distance? Not relationship, not romance, just the possibility of us rebuilding something beyond co-parenting?" Jasmine was quiet for a long time. She had prepared an answer, rehearsed it with her therapist. But now that the moment was here, all her practiced words felt inadequate. "I'm not the same person you fell in love with," she said finally. "That woman was soft and trusting and believed in fairy tales. You destroyed her, Phil. She's dead. I know. And I'm not sure I can ever fully trust you again. There's always going to be a part of me that remembers what you did. That remembers being thrown away at 2:47 in the morning. That remembers giving birth alone while you were 3,000 miles away, convincing yourself you were right. I understand. But—" Jasmine took a breath. "I think maybe that's okay. Maybe rebuilding doesn't mean going back to who we were. Maybe it means becoming something new, something scarred but stronger. Phil's eyes filled with tears. What are you saying? I'm saying I'm not ready to trust you with my heart yet. I might never be ready, but I think I'm ready to try family therapy. The three of us, not couples therapy. We're not a couple, but family therapy. Learning to communicate, learning to co-parent effectively, learning to see if there's any foundation worth building on. Yes, Phil said immediately. Whatever you want, whatever pace you need. And Phil, if you ever doubt me again, if you ever choose someone else's word over mine, if you ever make me feel like I'm not enough, I'm gone. Immediately. Permanently. You'll never see me or Ruby again. Never again. I swear on my life, on Ruby's life, on everything I have left. Jasmine nodded. Then we can try. They started family therapy the next week. It was brutal and awkward and uncomfortable. The therapist made them talk about everything, the betrayal, the pregnancy, the 2 years of Ruby growing up without her father, their individual trauma and how it shaped their ability to trust. Ruby played with toys in the corner while her parents excavated their shared wreckage and tried to figure out if anything was salvageable. But slowly, painfully slowly, something started to shift. Jasmine started to see not who Phil had been when he destroyed them, but who he was becoming. Someone who took accountability without making excuses. Someone who showed up consistently, even when it was hard. Someone who loved Ruby with a fierce protectiveness that reminded Jasmine of why she had fallen in love with him in the first place. Phil saw Jasmine's strength, how she had taken the worst betrayal imaginable and transformed it into an empire, how she had raised Ruby alone and created a child full of joy and confidence despite everything, how she was careful and cautious and protective, but not bitter or vindictive. They weren't the same people who had loved each other 3 years ago. They were different, harder, more scarred, more careful, but maybe, the therapist suggested gently, that wasn't necessarily worse, just different. Month 16, Jasmine invited Phil to Ruby's preschool graduation ceremony. After the ceremony, they got ice cream. The three of them together, sitting at a picnic table, Ruby between them, holding both their hands. "This is nice," Ruby announced through a mouthful of chocolate. "We should do this more." Jasmine and Phil looked at each other over their daughter's head. "Yeah," Jasmine said softly. "We should." That night, after dropping Ruby off with Angela for a sleepover, Jasmine sent Phil a text. "I'm not ready to try a romantic relationship. I don't know if I'll ever be ready, but I think I'm ready to try being friends. Real friends, not just co-parents. Would you want that?" Phil's response came immediately. "Yes. Absolutely yes. Friends sounds perfect." They started having coffee once a week. Just the two of them, without Ruby. Talking about their lives, their businesses, their healing processes, rebuilding the foundation of their relationship from scratch. It wasn't romance, it wasn't love, it wasn't the fairy tale they had lost, but it was real and honest, and built on a foundation of accountability and hard-won trust. Month 18, Ruby asked why Phil didn't live with them. Jasmine and Phil looked at each other, silently communicating. "Because Mama and Daddy are still learning how to be a family," Jasmine explained carefully. "We're friends right now and that's good, but we're still figuring out if we can be more." "Do you want to be more?" Ruby asked with the directness of a child. Jasmine looked at Phil, really looked. Saw the man he had become through brutal self-work and consistent effort, saw his love for Ruby, clear and unconditional, saw his respect for Jasmine's boundaries and healing process. "I don't know yet, baby. Maybe someday." Ruby seemed satisfied with this answer. "Okay, can we get pizza now?" That night, Jasmine called Phil. "Hi," she said when he answered. "Hi, is everything okay? Is Ruby—" "Ruby's fine. I wanted to talk to you." "Okay." Jasmine took a breath. "I think maybe I do want more someday. Not now. Maybe not for a long time. But I think I can see a future where we try again, where we build something new that honors what we destroyed but doesn't try to recreate it." Phil was quiet for a long moment. "Really? Really? But it has to be different, Phil. We can't go back to who we were. We have to move forward as who we've become." "I know. And I'm okay with that. I'm okay with moving at whatever pace you need. I'm okay with maybe. I'm okay with uncertainty. Because maybe and uncertain is more than I thought I'd ever have with you again." "Good, because I'm not making any promises. This is just an acknowledgement that the door isn't completely closed anymore. The door being slightly ajar is more than enough." They talked for 3 hours that night, about healing and forgiveness, and the difference between the two. About Ruby and their careers and their separate lives that might someday intertwine again. About fear and hope and the terrifying possibility of trying again. When they finally hung up, Jasmine sat in her dark living room and let herself feel something she hadn't felt in 3 years. Hope. Not certainty, not confidence. Just a tiny, fragile seed of hope that maybe some things that seemed broken beyond repair could be rebuilt into something new, something scarred but stronger, something hard-won and precious precisely because it had been earned, not given. The next Thursday, Phil showed up with smoothies and a smile. Ruby ran to him, shouting, "Daddy!" with pure joy. Jasmine watched them together and felt her armor crack just a little bit more, not gone. Maybe it would never be completely gone, but weakening, softening, allowing for the possibility of something she thought she'd never feel again. She caught Phil's eye over Ruby's head. He mouthed, "Thank you." Jasmine didn't respond, just smiled. Small, cautious, but real. And that, for now, was enough. For the first time in 3 years, it was enough. The end.